I've been talking about this so much for the last month with David and others that I honestly can't recall if I've actually shared it with the rest of you or who exactly.
David knows about this.
Well, this is what I was trying to pitch him on between rounds of that RCQ we went to.
You mean the one you won?
That's the one. And I was telling him my idea for a new podcast called What's in Your Mouth?
Mm-hmm.
And it's a review show about things that are edible or otherwise mouth appropriate. Everything from G Fuel to
G-Fuel.
The new cheese curd burger at Culver's to like pacifiers.
Yeah, you've hit this last one a few times, Stan. Every time I talk to you and you pitch this to me, you're like, yeah, it's like food and then adults using pacifiers. And I'm like, where is that coming from?
I don't want to know where that's coming from.
Is there a new YouTube channel that you found that you need to tell us about? Or like what adults using pacifiers?
Things.
I'll tell you exactly where this comes from. It comes from growing up in the 90s, watching 60 Minutes exposés about rave culture.
Or do you mean the movie Go, perhaps?
Watching like the characters in films like Go and other ravers doing narcotics and wearing pacifiers, sucking on pacifiers at their discotheques. And I'm just, I'm a bright-eyed 8-year-old. Like, is this what cool is? And now that I have a media empire, I can finally put that to the test while also eating things and getting paid to.
I'm horrified that things my son sees right now are the things he's going to be thinking about when he's in his mid-30s as being, was that cool? Like he's going to come back and be like, guys, we need to do a prestige television show on Skibbity Toilet.
Please no.
Are you, Stanislav,
yes,
aware of, I believe it was Griffin McElroy's Amiibo podcast where he would just place Amiibos in his mouth?
I'm not really familiar with my brother
Griffin's Amiibo
universe.
Corner.
Those were Vines, were they not? I thought he was doing Vine.
Yeah, I think they were short form videos. I don't think there was a lot of content besides the placing of the Amiibo in the mouth.
Yeah.
But
the pacifiers are really just to highlight the fact that it doesn't only have to be about food. It can just be about mouth stuff.
Mouthfeel.
But it's not a
mouth
prank
stuff.
show. I'm not like trying to get you guys to put something like gross or dangerous in your mouth.
Like
I just want us to like put, well, actually, maybe that could be a good one. Like we all taste the Nintendo Switch cartridge and then talk about it.
I did. It's bad.
They have bittering agents on them, is my understanding, like they do with batteries. Is that right?
It's very bitter.
Yeah, it's to help kids from eating, to keep kids from eating them.
I don't know how it would be possible for a child to eat that after placing it in their mouth because it is bad.
Well, that's what they do with batteries now too. Your good old CR3202s or whatever they're called, 2302s.
You can't take that away from me too.
Yeah, eating batteries.
The 2032, baby.
This is
You can
the
have the
nanny
cartridges,
state.
but not the batteries.
We can't even eat batteries anymore.
Too woke.
Hello and welcome to episode 301 of The Dive Down, a Magic the Gathering podcast focused on the latest decks, trends, and strategies for the casual spike. My name is Stanislav here in Chicago, and with me on the line from Denver, Colorado, it's the one and only Shane Beeps.
Stanislav, are those German shears? Those look like some fine German shears made for trimming mustaches, beards.
Yes, these probably came with
Your DeWalt.
my grooming gear.
Speaking of grooming,
Yeah, can you send me those scissors?
Devin, you don't need the scissors
Oh,
anymore.
I guess I don't need them anymore.
Devin
That's
is
true.
here with a clean face, the face
So
of a young
clean.
child.
It's cold. It's very, very cold. It's perfect timing to do this in the winter, right? That's when you usually shave your beard.
Now, Devin, do you have like a job interview lined up for some esports team?
No, I just wanted to.
Nice.
Devin, do you play? Devin, I know that basically my understanding of your interests, Devin, are like hardcore, metalcore, and Magic the Gathering.
That's accurate, and a lot of Balatro, yeah.
Yeah, but
Omelets.
are you into other do you have like a secret phase of like Heroes of the Storm or like League or something like that?
I had a Call of Duty phase, and like when I was like towards the end of high school, played a lot of Call of Duty, but I mean, right after I left high school, that's like when I really started getting into Magic. And that's pretty much it. Now we're here.
Now we're here.
We made it.
We are here. Episode 301.
Here.
Stan?
I should introduce David, the Godfather Harbarger, who tried to get one under me by interrupting me and then later complaining that I didn't introduce him.
Yeah, you know how I work. It's been many years, so you understand.
And then, of course, the aforementioned Doom, Wake. Devin
Isn't
O'Donnell.
it Wake, Doom?
Yeah, I think it's Wake, Doom.
Mr. Wake.
Look, I don't know why you spelled your name the way you did, but you put a comma in the middle, and I'm going to pronounce it.
True.
Doom Wake Part 1, is like a pure action film. And then, like, as they expanded the world of Doom Wake, it just stuff got off the rails. Like, the world of the assassins and the competitive Magic the Gathering scene. I just wasn't into it as much.
It's not Doom Woke, though, just to make sure you're clear at home. Just want to clear that up.
Oh, God. I don't even know.
Episode 301.
Okay.
We made it. Okay, well, remember when we talked to Dr. Richard Garfield?
I do.
That was very professional and austere, and I'm already sensing some energy shifts.
Yeah, this episode is not going to be that.
Yeah.
we have to let loose after that buttoned up conversation.
That's actually why I shaved.
Yeah, let loose.
Speaking of letting loose, you know how I let loose during my card gaming expeditions? Is with G Fuel and Heavy Play.
I was going to say you let loose by keeping it extremely tight and organized.
Extremely tight.
Yeah.
Extremely organized. My Heavy Play accessories, my card gaming accessories. Did I tell the story already where I literally pulled out all of my deck boxes and storage containers because I was like getting all of my old decks out of the deck boxes? And I looked at everything and I was like, all I really want is the Heavy Play stuff. Everything else can be given away because it improves your gameplay and your game day through having deck boxes, dice boxes, play mats, card sleeves with enhanced ergonomics, mobility, and protection. I feel like one thing we don't talk about, or Randy does not have in his boilerplate ad copy and does expect us to riff on, is I think they just look really, really good. Like the colors and the quality of like the, vegan leathery type stuff on the premium boxes looks really choice. And then also I think just like the basic plastic looks really good. You may have seen the professor do a review on some new deck boxes and stuff like that, like he used to do all the time. And what he did is something I never do, which is like mix the colors up. Like he did like a white top and a blue bottom, and like the blue like shone through the white seam, and it looked really choice.
I used to do that with satin towers, where when I had like the 3-piece satin tower, I would find people with the same model tower but different colors, and we would trade them up. And now my satin tower is 3 different colors, and it looks awesome, even though I never use it anymore.
Is it Neapolitan?
You all have things in colors other than black. What's wrong with you guys?
Yes,
I know,
David.
it's weird.
Some of us still have a lease on life.
But if you want to increase your lease on life, I guess you would decrease the lease. Devin is showing off a blue and red combo.
Is it? Those are the wrong boxes.
Those are the wrong sizes.
That's an 80 on 100, I believe.
We'll do that again some other time.
I really like the 80 on top, 100 on bottom. You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
Like that's kind of my jam.
The pear-shaped.
Yeah.
Heavy Play's unique equip bank system allows you to magnetically attach your deck and dice boxes, make custom deck bundles, carry all your gaming gear in a single hand. You can potentially get it at your LGS if you're lucky, or shop always at heavyplay.com. You can use our code, the Dive Down 2024 for 10% off of your first order. Stanislav,
Shane,
what the heck are we doing this week? How are we going to follow up episode 300?
with a grab bag, of course.
A classic grab bag.
You know what? 'Tis the season for a cornucopia of content.
Mm-hmm.
Ooh.
You like that?
You know, the cornucopia was not in the Fruit of the Loom logo.
No, it's just a basket, is it not? Or is it just fruit on the table?
It's just fruit. There's no cornucopia.
Yeah.
It's like
the cornucopia was in some logo.
It's in my favorite. It's one of my favorite Mandela effect things.
I remember that too.
You remember the cornucopia?
Yeah,
That wasn't there?
I guess.
It's there in your mind.
when he was 8, he thought pacifiers and cornucopias were cool. I mean, I'm looking at one right now, but I guess, okay, looks like Fruit of the Loom is talking about it and saying that it's not real. Someone made one just to really continue to mess with us. All right.
Well, we do have a grab bag indeed of content related to Magic the Gathering, other games, and other life choices. We're going to check in on Standard now that Foundations has arrived. Devin can't stop RCQing.
Can't.
Why would he?
Learning about formats. And we're here to learn vicariously through him. And Dave, I guess, can't stop drafting Sarah Angels and Shivan Dragons 32 years later.
Amazing. Feels great still.
Honestly, I think that is like a very cool aspect of Foundations.
Do you guys know Shivan Dragon is an uncommon in Foundations?
Yeah.
Wow.
Look how they
Power
massacred
creep,
my boy.
right?
Yeah.
Meanwhile, Shane and I, we can't stop cracking fake packs of TCG Pocket.
I cut mine open with my fingertip.
I can't not believe that you guys are going to spend time on this episode talking about Pokemon Pocket.
I thought
Pokemon
Stan was
TCG
joking.
Pocket.
Yeah.
I thought he was joking.
I don't know what indication there was at any point that I was joking, consider I kept bringing up, I want to talk about the Pokemon app after we talk about Magic. I've said this repeatedly, and there was no LOLs or ha-has or smirking cat emojis.
If the listeners could see Stan's face, he's very serious right now.
I hope I sound serious. I've been thinking a lot about this game, and I have grievances to air.
It's hard to take you. It's hard to take you seriously with the scissors in your hand, though.
Or maybe we take him very seriously.
Now's the time. Serious as a heart attack.
I have a lot to say about this game too, so I'm excited.
But before all that, we got a housekeep. We actually have a handful of important announcements about the state of the dive down, the future of our show, and how we're going to end this year.
Today.
Period. Yeah, today. All right, housekeeping. No new patrons, no increased tiers. I don't know if Chartable still exists for us to read reviews.
It exists, but there's no new reviews, so I don't know if that's on them or on me.
Irregardless, let's talk about the future of the dive down.
Okay.
Shane, the floor is yours.
Okay.
You're going to tighten that up, right?
Yeah.
Shane, do you want me to say it for you? Because I can say it with a smile.
Yeah, Stan, can you read my notes for me? Because writing this was a lot easier than probably saying this, but I want to let everyone know this will be my last official episode on the dive down. And this hasn't been super easy decision to make. Like my co-hosts know, I've been mentioning it to them for a number of months, like trying to figure out a way that would make sense. Like, when's the time to do it? What capacity would leaving look like? How would it impact the podcast? And so it's something I've been wrestling with for a while. And I do want to be clear off the top that this is not therefore some kind of reaction to like Universes Beyond or anything like that.
No, you're just sick of us.
That's true.
I thought it was the mounting HR complaints.
Well, I do a lot of collective action work with my colleagues. We do a lot of, talking about wages, a lot of stuff that HR likes to wag their finger at. And I'll tell you what, talk about your wages. I'm honestly just not engaged enough with Magic to feel like I'm offering a lot on this podcast to like you all, to the listeners. Importantly, I really want to free time up to focus on some other creative output, like stuff that Stan and I have been hitting at with a lot of, video game playing, a lot of video game chit chat. And it's a matter of creating that opportunity for both of us, I think, to have some time to push that over the finish line. And just a lot, other stuff. Like, I think there's a lot of opportunity in the category of stuff that this podcast has always been stuff we like and stuff we're doing and talking to people that I like talking to, Dave, Devin, Stanislav, not in that order necessarily.
Okay. Stanislav first with a bullet.
I've had to talk to him for almost 40 years. So you're welcome to it.
That's incredibly frightening. That's terrifying. I mean, it's been 38 years. My God.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's that. Like I'm going to be leaving the dive down, but what that means is I'm not really going anywhere.
You're not leaving the dive down. You are no longer going to be talent, is my understanding of how you're conceiving this. Is that right?
Yeah, that's been like the discussion, right? Is like get off the mic, hit,
please,
keep on the mixing board, the ones and twos of the mouse and keyboard. And, I'm going to stay engaged with you all and stay engaged with, our friendships and stuff like that, and the community, of course, but just not be preparing episode content. But just to be like really clear is like the fact that we've been doing this for 300 episodes together, and the fact that we had enough people engaged in what we were doing to like make us want to keep doing it more than just the enjoyment we get of making something together has been really gratifying. I'm super proud of what we've accomplished over the last like 6 years now almost, and just really grateful for the opportunity to collaborate with people like y'all and the audience and the fun we've been able to have. And like I said, it's not just these guys, it's you all out there in listener land that you really embraced us, and I think embraced what we came here to do, and found something in what we're doing that you liked and wanted to keep listening to, and that never really ceases to blow my mind. And it's something that I'm really proud of having been a part of making. And so I really want to thank all you out there for making it a thing that I can be proud of.
Yeah. It might not be apparent to people on the audience. I almost said on the show. It's very apparent to us on the show. Shane is saying that he's kind of taking over this production style role for us, I guess. But Shane has already been doing that for most of the time. And ever since Tanner left us as an editor, Shane has also been primarily doing the edits for us somehow. The truth is, we would not have gotten as far or become as rigorous or as dedicated to making a podcast without Shane really kind of being the sort of driving force behind people when we were just starting out, right? And really helping us realize we had something here and we could do it, and we could do it better, and constantly being like, guys, this is the way that we need to do this in order to like grow from where we are now. We're kind of like, we're reaching more people, and that means we need to take it more seriously. Or like Shane has always kind of been the voice of, like, in a way, Stan and I are dads, but Shane is kind of the dad of the podcast in some ways. And he'll still be here in that role, spiritually, even if he's not on microphone anymore.
Here's what I predict. I predict it'll be impossible to keep Shane completely off the mic.
Oh, yeah, that's not possible.
One episode tops.
For one, you're coming to Portland. So we're all going to be at a MagicCon together.
Dang it.
Yeah.
So we'll probably want to record something together after that for old time's sake. Those are always fun hotel room shows, or postmortems at the very least. I also predict that at some point we're going to say something on mic that Shane is going to want to leave an editor's note on, and then
that's the
interrupt podcasts with, listeners, Shane is here, and I'd just like you to know that Stan is lying. Which was probably true. I lie a lot. I love to lie.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if something is grabbing me that I want to talk about, or something seems interesting. So, yes. I mean, so long for now. I'm not leaving the rest of this episode, by the way. Thanks again for this opportunity, everyone. And I want you to remember, seeing the river is not the same as seeing the fish. I learned that from a very important Magic card.
Which? Oh, yeah. Yeah. Okay.
Now, obviously, I understand what this means.
Okay.
Without question, but maybe you can explain that to everyone.
Can I tell you something? That I Googled this to try to figure out what the source of it was, because I was like, what in the world is this? And it said that it was a quote from David Foster Wallace. And I was like, I don't think that's true, Google. And now I realize I'm not
It's
going
the second best.
I'll let people figure out where it's actually from. But.
I thought that you were quoting Twin Peaks: The Return, like I am the water and this is the well, drink full and descend or something.
Ooh.
But then I realized that Shane probably hasn't watched Twin Peaks: The Return.
No. What's the return?
That's
Is
the
that season
HBO.
3?
That's the HBO series from 2018 or 19 or whatever that was.
Okay.
It was Showtime.
Was it?
So that's that's my thing.
It's not TV. It's Showtime.
Yes, that's Shane's thing. Now,
What's the next
Completely
thing?
unrelated to this.
I mean, listen.
Completely.
Here's the thing. We're at episode 301. Shane was like, we've been talking about this for a while with Shane about his interest in other things growing, but still wanting to be a part of the podcast, but not necessarily wanting to be a part of Magic quite as much. You did start to say a minute ago, just so people know, it's not related to Universes Beyond. It's not related to anything specific with Magic. It's just kind of where you are and have been growing a little bit.
Yeah, it's just a matter of like, how much am I playing? What
Right.
am I actually bringing to this podcast besides hot takes?
Yeah. So not to belabor it, but I think that as we approach 300, sort of many of us on the show, we're kind of looking at each other or going through certain personal moments, just kind of being like, what is the next phase of the dive down like?
And we don't know.
And to figure that out, we need to take a vacation.
Yeah. That's the easiest way to say it, right, Stan?
Yeah. Yeah. You know, we've been doing this every week for 6 years. And the show has gone through so many iterations. And it's not that we've necessarily run out of things to say, but I think we all feel a little burnt out on content creation, but not so burnt out that we're ready to quit podcasting or the dive down or this thing that we've built. Just kind of like Thanksgiving is next week. Then Christmas is right around the corner. This week, Christmas and Hanukkah line up. So, it's going to be crazy in my house. And then after Christmas is New Year's Eve. And,
Just need a
it's
little
gonna be
bit of
crazy
time.
at Dave's house.
Can you combine the menorah and the Christmas tree, or is that kind of
Stan does every year.
You can put the menorah on top instead of the little angel.
Right.
Okay?
So yeah, long story short, we're going to take a brief vacation from weekly content. Maybe it may be that there's no new episodes until January. It may be that there's occasional episodes until January.
I will say, I'm assuming that if there's a ban on December 16th or whatever that
We
is,
gotta do one,
that
yeah.
some of us will hop on the mic and talk about that, whether it's extemporaneously or not. I mean, the other thing that we should note is that we will be, our Patreon is set up to be by the episode. And so we won't be charging people for anything while this hiatus is happening.
Yes.
But we've just been doing this for a long time, and there's stuff, lots of us have lots of things going on that need to be attended to, maybe with a little bit of extra focus. And so we need that break. And then we're going to figure out what it looks like for this new chapter of the show.
Now, and when Dave says we have other stuff going on, he means that Shane and I have Steam Decks now.
Yeah, that's all we do.
Yeah.
And I have,
We're
like,
too
a
busy
CD Keys
pushing those
account.
buttons.
Yeah. Yeah. And I have my watch along podcast of Columbo that I need to do as well.
That would be really good.
I got some Bellatrix to keep up on too. So
Devin and I are starting a Bellatrix podcast. We're going to do one episode about every Joker.
So Devin does know how to do video content. I don't know what the level of Bellatrix content out there is, but it is a Game of the Year nominee, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
Now, strike while the iron's hot.
All right.
I voted in the Game of the Year ballots, mostly only in the categories where I could vote for Bellatrix.
Which is most of them.
No, because Bellatrix was not nominated for Best Esports Team, which was, in fact, a category, as well as Best Esports Player.
That's Devin, though, right?
it's also probably not nominated for best first person shooter. I would think, but I could be
Shucks.
wrong.
Yeah.
Yeah, look, the show is important to us. And I will admit, like, I have thought also about leaving the show over the past year or so, but it's hard to do, and I still like Magic. And I still like my friends. And so, it's a thing that I want to figure out how to continue to fit into my life. But I think this hiatus will help us kind of come to that conclusion.
I also think Shane's not the only one who maybe feels a little disengaged with Magic. And I want to share like a personal feeling that I'm wrestling with a little bit, which is,
I just want to throw down a flag here. We are transitioning away from news about the show at this point, and we are going into maybe the first topic of our grab bag, right?
Sure.
Which is a little topic I like to call,
does Magic suck right now?
Does Modern suck right now?
Does Modern suck right now?
It does say Modern on the show notes, so.
Yeah.
So I qualified for this RC in February.
Oh, did you? I didn't hear about that.
I'm very excited to play.
Did you?
Just barely.
Okay.
Skin of his teeth.
And as Dave mentioned, there's a ban announcement in December. And Devin, I don't know about you, but I find it literally impossible to find the motivation to practice Modern matches when I have very little faith or confidence that the format is going to go unscathed in December. And part of that is to do with the approach to bannings that the R&D team has kind of demonstrated since Lord of the Rings has come out. And it feels like whenever they ban a card, it's usually a pretty profound change. Sometimes it's predictable, like in the case of Nadu. Sometimes it's a little bit unpredictable, like in the case of Grief, or to some extent Fury, even though like they told us a week in advance we're probably going to ban Fury. And for that reason, it's just I don't want to feel burned by investing time to practice for an event when I can't even like remotely begin to imagine what the makeup of that event will be.
Right. I mean, I'll be honest with you. I'm in the same exact spot. We have I'm going to be going to Charlotte, which I think is a couple weeks after the one that you're going to be going to. But in any case, I don't really have. I haven't played a single match of Modern in maybe like a month or so. We got to wait until the ban list comes out, and hopefully the format gets shaken up, and who knows what they're willing to do. It could be a multitude of different things. We kind of assume one card that's going to go, but what else goes with it, if anything? And it's really hard to kind of figure out what we should be doing now,
Yeah. Yeah, because I think like the smart money is on the One Ring finally goes.
Yeah.
But I'm nervous that like if, there's a lot of chatter about energy being too good.
Can I give you some numbers?
Yeah, I think that's chatter because I want to hear these numbers. I don't know if the numbers support the chatter, but
well, real quick, there's someone on Blue Sky named Modern Metagame at bsky.social, who I'm not familiar with them yet, but they did post some stats. They only have 48 followers so far. So, at any rate, there were some compelling stats here, and that was from a past week of Modern. This is it from a Blue Sky message. A skeet, apparently, of November 17th, that says that in the last week, Boros Energy and Mardu Energy are 20.2% of the meta share and 11.9% of the meta share. The win rate is 54% and 54.2% for those two decks. And their X2 conversions in large tournaments is 21% for Boros Energy and 17.9% for Mardu Energy. Their win rates are decent, not soul crushing, but their meta share is kind of soul crushing right now. Thoughts?
Yes, and
questions?
This is like the weirdest best deck we've had in Modern's history, where it seems like do you guys remember when Jund was the best deck, right? With like Deathrite Shaman, Bloodbraid Elf, and like people were definitely clamoring for bans, but it feels sort of like we're in a similar time period where it's not like the best deck in the format is killing you on turn 2 or doing something completely unfair, although maybe their cards are a little bit more powerful than yours. But it seems like at the end of the day, it is still, would we consider it a fair deck? I think I would.
Definitely. I mean, its play pattern is fair. It's just really efficient, and really powerful for what it gets.
Yeah, I mean, the fact that these win rates don't even at most they're 55%. Boros Energy has a 55% non-mirror win rate.
Yeah.
And that X2 conversion rate of 21% is not the highest in their sample.
Right.
Belcher has a higher conversion rate. Ruby Storm has a higher conversion rate. Eldrazi-tron has a higher conversion rate. Other decks have higher win rates, including Amulet Titan, Teamer Grinding Station. And that's why I mentioned that there's chatter about banning something out of Storm. And, you know, I don't want to discount the possibility that R&D responds to that chatter by doing something if that's what the player base wants. And I find that a little upsetting. Obviously, I'm super biased because I've loved this deck since MH3 has come out, but that's why that's also why like it's hard to feel the motivation to prepare for this tournament. And if I'm not playing Modern, I'm not as motivated to play other formats as consistently, short of like Cube and Commander with my friends and Dave.
My friends and Dave.
Dave, you're a colleague.
I know.
Well, Stan, perhaps I can interest you in a format later on that may catch your eye. We'll get to that in a second. But
I'm interested, Devin. I'm you know, it's a new era. Who knows what's going to happen?
I'm interested in always listening to what you have to say, Devin. I can't promise I'm going to buy what you're selling.
You sure it's always? I feel like we were having a conversation about something else the other day. Maybe not. Maybe I'm thinking of somebody else.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Well, you know what? I'll just say I'm glad to hear I'm not alone in this kind of like feeling unmotivated. And maybe it's the season. Season's changing. The days are getting shorter.
Yeah. I mean, if you look around anecdotally, there's a lot of people on Twitter and such that are like, Modern sucks, blah, 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 blah. There always kind of are. Yeah. It'll change. We'll come back. And it's certainly, like Stan said, tying up with the time of year, with the fact that we've kind of gotten to this milestone, with Shane kind of like changing status and all those kind of things. It kind of made sense for us to tie this all together into a tidy little hiatus for the rest of us.
And to be abundantly clear, for you guys as well. Let's say they ban Guide of Souls, Ocelot Pride, Johnny, like, and they're like, we just don't want Boros Energy to exist. We sold our MH3 packs. We've made our money, and now we want to fix the format. I'm not going to quit Magic over that, and I'm not going to not play Modern. I have store credit all over the place. I have a little collection of good cards and important lands, and you know, we'll find something new to play. And then when we come back from Dive Down winter break, that's what we'll probably be talking about. What we're planning and learning about for Modern on our road to the Modern RCs in the first half of next year.
Yep. I agree with that. But for now, what we're going to do with the rest of this episode is really talk about Foundations in a lot of different aspects.
Yeah, Foundations is cool.
It actually is quite interesting, I think.
So Foundations is here, baby. And there's a lot of impactful cards for Standard. Devin has a lot of playtime in Standard recently. I'm looking forward to hearing him talk about decks that he's playing with and against. There's multiple pages of Devin notes, which are my favorite kind of notes because I didn't write them, as someone who actually plays Magic does. But
Devin also uses really interesting fonts.
Oh, yeah.
What do you mean?
You know what he wrote.
He's the only guy I know who can read Wingdings.
Dude,
Him and David Carson.
Anyways.
What I'm talking about first is kind of a broad overview of the impact of Foundations on Standard, and looking through the lens of the SCG Con Columbus 10K RCQ from this last Saturday. There were 270 players that entered the event. I saw that Ross Miriam was there.
Mm-hmm.
He did well. Way to go, Ross. Playing a deck that I know he likes playing, or a style of deck rather. So some of the so we'll go through these cards. Devin, I think, can flesh out some of this while I'm talking about it, and they'll come up later when he's talking about decks and such. But you know, Llanowar Elves is back. You know what Llanowar Elves is. It was the 9th most popular creature at the event in 15% of the decks. There's a lot of Golgari mid-range running it. What else are you seeing with Llanowar Elves, Doom? I know some people were just being like, I'm going to try everything with Llanowar Elves because why not?
Yeah, me included. There really hasn't been a ton. I've been looking at a lot of like MTG results and the SCG. There's been some other, like the SCG had some other side events there, and it's in a couple of Elves decks, a couple of the Drools Surprise, which is Smuggler's Surprise ramp, and then some of the domain decks are playing it just so they can go like turn 1 Elf, turn 2 Overlord, and have like a faster start there. But really, the bulk of where it's being played is Golgari midrange, for sure.
Got it. Which seems to be a very popular, well-performing deck. There's a trifecta of red and Boros spells that are seeing play in weirdly red or Boros aggressive strategies. There's like Burst Lightning, which is essentially like a shock variant, right? It was the 5th most powerful spell of the event, 24% of decks. So it's basically just an instant, shock, 2 damage to any target, but you can kick it for an additional 4, and it deals 4 damage instead. So, not your preferred usage, but hey, if it's late game and you want to do 4 damage to the dome for 5 mana, go for it. Boros Charm, you know what this is in, strangely, again, Boros aggressive decks.
Weird.
Bolt Wave. Bolt Wave is a fresh printing, right? This is not a card that existed before.
No, that's new.
It is
it's
our upgraded Rift Bolt. No, not
Lava
Rift Bolt.
Spike.
Lava Spike.
It's also not upgraded. Well, it's side graded, let's say, because it doesn't target.
Yeah, it
right?
does not target.
So it gets around Leyline, but it doesn't hit planeswalkers, which Lava Spike does.
It's better in Commander, though. Hello.
I was going to say it's commander graded.
Yeah.
It's a red sorcery that deals 3 damage to each opponent. That was in 12.1% of decks, according to Goldfish.
I want to ask you guys. So we've been talking about Modern for a long time, and we always we like to talk about the 20% burn win rate or whatever in Modern. Did you guys ever think over the course of the past couple of years that we'd ever get anything even close to Lava Spike in Standard? It just it's weird to me where you go back a couple of years and look at what Standard used to be, and it's like they just gave us a better Lava Spike. It's really surprising to see.
I mean, they not only gave us Lava Spike, they also gave us a pretty good Lightning Bolt shock variant and Boros Charm at the same time.
Right.
So,
yeah, that's pushed. They're pushing the concept, and people went for it. There's a lot of people running Boros or red aggressive decks for sure. There's a new land, Soulstone Sanctuary, which is tap, add colorless, and you can pay 4, and it becomes a 3/3 creature with vigilance and all creature types. It's still a land, by the way. Seems like it's got a bunch of decks, like mostly Golgari midrange and mono black midrange style decks. I guess you can't do anything too color heavy, I guess, or where you need colors early.
So the reason that you see this in the standard decks is because of an Unholy Annex, which requires you to have a demon, and this being all creature types just lets you kind of put another demon into your deck without having to use up a spell slot on it.
Mm-hmm. Kiora the Rising Tide, 2 and a blue for a legendary Merfolk Noble 3/2. When she enters, you draw 2 cards and discard 2 cards, and she also has Threshold. Whenever she attacks, if there are 7 or more cards in your graveyard, you may create Scion of the Deep, a legendary 8/8 blue octopus creature token. Pretty sweet.
Worth noting, this card is making waves also in Modern a little bit, as far as it's one of the cards that has emerged being, I don't know about making waves, but it's in Goryo's Vengeance.
It's making tides.
It's making tides, sure. But it's a playable card there as well, which is interesting.
Yeah, it fits right in with the Abhorrent Oculus Reanimator style decks as a 2 of most of the time, it seems. I'm curious why not a 3. Maybe there's just not room or it hasn't been that necessary. So there's big value here. Right, a 3/2 for 3 lets you dig through your deck to see more cards, but then also lets you discard 2, so you loot 2 effectively. Enables that reanimation strategy. The threshold effect seems bonkers. 7 or more cards seems reasonable to me to have in your yard. I don't know exactly if that's true or not in these style of decks, though, but that's a big payoff. This thing survives and you attack with it, you get a free 8/8 creature token. Fine with me.
Yeah, and there was also from the SCG, there's I believe it's an Esper Reanimator deck. Let me pull this up again, where it's utilizing Kiora as a way to discard cards into the graveyard to enable Rite of the Moth, which is just 4 mana reanimation, so discarding Atraxa, Vel'Kovoth, stuff like that. And there's just a lot of cool things you can do with Kiora.
Yes, it's a neat card. I like it. Refute kind of goes along for the ride here. It's not anywhere near as popular as Kiora, but it's our cancel variant where you also loot, you draw and discard. Crystal Barricade, which we talked about in the spoiler episode. I'm actually, slightly happy that it's seeing some play. It's the 1 and a white 0/4 artifact wall with Defender. You have Hexproof, and you can also prevent all non-combat damage that would be dealt to other creatures you control. So it's like a handful of stuff, like nothing that was super high performing at the SCG, like Azorius Dex, Boros Mice, Boros Aggro, Azorius Oculus style stuff. Kellen Planar Trailblazer. This was a spicy one of in only 7 decks.
Yeah, so this card I've had in draft several times at this point, which is kind of weird. But I think it plays a little bit more powerfully than it looks, I bet, especially if you have a chance to be able to set yourself up to protect it or have it be one of the last cards you play or only care about it when you play it later, because it draws you a good amount of cards if you can get it all the way leveled up.
Yeah, it's like a level up card, right? So it's it starts as a red 2/1. And then you pay 1 in a red, and it becomes a fairy detective and gains whenever it deals combat damage to a player, exile a top card of your library. You may play that card this turn. And then 2 in a red, it becomes a 3/2 human fairy rogue and gains double strike.
Yep.
So sweet.
Yeah, Kellen seems like a card that's way better at the top of your curve. Like, sometimes you're going to need to fill out the early curve with a 1-drop if you're playing the red aggro deck. But turn 4, turn 5, play it, do the 2-mana thing, untap, then immediately do the 3-mana thing, and then it becomes a lot harder to block. But early on, it's just going to trade off for a lot of stuff.
Well, isn't there a play pattern where you play it early and then you get in a couple shocks worth of goblin guides worth of damage while the coast is clear, and then if there's other bodies on the opposing board, you just start investing that mana, maybe at even on opponent's end step when you have nothing else to spend it on.
Yeah, you can do that too.
Yeah, I mean, it's mostly just going to
nice.
die. It's nice that it's flexible, but it mostly just dies if you play it early. So, I think you can try to do the other thing, which is if I flood out or if I top deck it late, then maybe you get a chance to kind of use its other abilities.
Because it never gains flying. It is a ground fairy.
Yeah.
So
grounded.
Abyssal Harvester, 1 black for a 3/2 demon warlock. It has a tap ability, exile target creature card from a graveyard that was put there this turn. Create a token as a copy of it, except it's a nightmare in addition to its other types. Then exile all other nightmare tokens you control.
Please note, it does not go away at the end of turn. So if you have this on board, you kill somebody's creature with it, you tap this, you get their creature out of the graveyard back on your team immediately. Which is the pattern I played against it in Limited. And that's not easy to deal with sometimes, especially if you're maybe in a non-interactive deck or you just, kind of get outrun on removal and you can't kill this.
Seems cool.
Yeah. Here's the thing about this card in Constructed. I think that this would be a shoe-in 4 of in every single demon deck if it just had 1 more point of toughness. The big problem with this card is because of the fact that it's a 3/2, it's a 3-mana card that dies to cut down. And because of how popular black midrange is, you can't really afford to make that type of exchange. But the ability on it is absurd, where you, like Dave said, it's not just the token stays in play. You can actually use the token if you have Fountain Pour, where you sack the token to Fountain Pour, draw a card, and then use the Harvester again. It's main deck graveyard hate against the Oculus deck, where if they mill over an Oculus, you just tap your Harvester, get their Oculus. It's not just creatures that died; it's creatures that got milled over. So you can do your own milling and stuff. You can mill over a Valgavoth or an Atraxon, get that back. It's a messed up card, and it would be so much better if it was just a 3/3.
Yeah, it kind of has slight Dothy Voidwalker vibes or something like that.
It's good.
I will note that James Spinelli went 7/2 with a Rakdos control deck with 4 ofs of Harmless Offering and Demonic Pact. I wonder if the combo performed well or not, but sweet. It looks like someone also mentioned a top 8 at the challenge this past weekend.
Yep.
That's funny.
I actually tried out the challenge list. It was really fun to play. I'm not entirely sure how good it is, but it's, getting to cast Harmless Offering on Demonic Pact is if you haven't done it before, it's something I would recommend. It's a good feeling.
Day of Judgment is there. It was in an Esper Reanimator strategy. It went 7/2. It was a 3 of in that. So Day of Judgment does exist in Standard. Our 4-mana Wrath. Cards I was slightly surprised to not see more of, and Devin, I'm curious if you have any takes on these, like Solemn Simulacrum, Authority of the Consuls, Maelstrom Pulse, not super popular cards that I could see.
Yeah, I mean, I will have to say, time has not done Jens Thorin any good. Like Solemn Simulacrum was a banger way back in the day. Don't get me wrong. But just not really the appropriate rate nowadays. Maelstrom Pulse sometimes you'll see as a one of in the Golgari mid-range decks. And then Authority, I'm kind of surprised you put Authority on here because I saw it in a lot of sideboards.
Maybe I missed it. I don't look at sideboards, Devin. That's like a 60. I play one of on Arena.
Authority is an extremely potent sideboard card.
So yeah, that's kind of like the brief overview of like, here's some stuff that is seeing some play from a person who hasn't played. I will say before Devin starts talking is I'm waiting for stuff to shake out like a little bit, like maybe like another week or so, and then cashing in my wild cards. Like I have like hundreds of commons and uncommons, of course, but I have like maybe like 40 rares or like maybe like 25 rares and like 45 mythics. I think I can get like 2 a deck with that. I just kind of want to make it a decent one. And you know it's going to be aggro. You know it is.
You sound like you seem like a Boros Charm kind of guy.
I mean, I do love having fast matches. I don't want to think. I just want to win or lose quickly.
Seems like a decent place to start if you're going to play some Arena.
I mean, those red cards aren't going anywhere. Let's just say that anytime
They're
soon.
legal for 5 years, so.
Well, I mean, then like the mice are legal for like what 2.5 more years still. So
Yeah.
But keep in mind, they're going to inject new sets into Standard every 2 months starting next year. So
yeah, can my mouse hang with Squidward? I don't know.
yeah, so make sure to like don't burn all of your wild cards on dreams, you know, because you may need to revise decks or pivot into new ones.
Hey, I have the most powerful card in the game, Stanislav.
The company, the dive down company card,
the dive down debit card, baby.
I thought you were going to say your library card.
I mean, thank you, Devin, for supporting your local library.
Y'all. Can I digress? I was in the local library today. I spent like 40 minutes there.
It's great.
I love my local library.
Were you with child or were you just there on your own?
I was with 2 childs.
There you go.
We got like 6 books.
Oh, yeah.
What book? I got 3 Blu-rays.
What book did you get? Name one of the books.
Yeah.
Well, they're all children's books.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I spent a lot of time with those, but
One of them was a Scooby-Doo book. It was like Scooby-Doo and the Mystery of the Haunted Library.
oh, yeah.
It's apt.
Yeah,
A little on the nose.
Yeah.
Speaking of libraries. Okay, so with this next section, I don't know how long we're going to spend on this. I'll try to maybe not make it too long, but I've been playing a lot of Standard over the past couple of weeks, especially with the recent RCQ announcement and my my sort of disinterest in the Modern format a little bit. I wanted to kind of open up and explore to see what Standard has to offer because there's 500 plus cards in Foundations. There's bound to be something to explore, and there's a ton of interesting, like I've been playing a lot of sweet decks. I was talking to Dave earlier about Agatha's Soul Cauldron and Arcanus the Omnipotent. I played some, demonic back decks, but for the folks at home, this is where we like to talk about the spikes. For people who are interested or perhaps maybe looking to get into some RCQs over the next couple of months, I figured it would be a good idea to kind of see what the top of the metagame looks like after this first wave of Foundations results. Because we had, I think there was 3 challenges this weekend, as well as the SCG in Columbus. So a reasonable sampling of, what is like kind of what's rising to the top. So just a couple of decks that I wanted to mention, talk about like what Foundations cards they have in them, what the overall strategy is, so on and so forth. Now, the first deck, I guess you could label this 1A and 1B, because we can't talk about the top of the Standard format without discussing Black Midrange. And there are 2 pretty distinct Black Midrange decks. There's Dimir, which is the first one we're going to discuss, and Golgari. So with regards to Dimir, there are the way that the Dimir decks play out, like it's much less of your traditional mid-range stuff and way more of like a Delver tempo style deck where they utilize cheap threats, premium removal, and then just a couple of haymakers at the top of the curve, sometimes Enduring Curiosity. Sometimes Shieldred, although that one's kind of falling out of favor. And then Kaido Bane of Nightmares has been a huge boon to the Dimir deck. That's kind of like their big finisher now. Sometimes they play counter magic. That's a bit of a hot topic for debate here. The popular counter spells, at least in some of the lists, are 3 Steps Ahead and Phantom Interference, but some only play interference, some play no counter spells. I kind of lean a little bit more towards the side of not playing counter spells, because you do kind of have a decent amount of good tap out threats. Like specifically Kaido, you kind of have to spend 3 mana on your own turn, so it can be a little bit hard to hold up counter spells. With regards to Foundations cards in the Dimir midrange deck, sadly, not a lot here. The only one that people are even really considering is Spectral Sailor as kind of a complement to the other 1-drop Spyglass Siren, where now that you have both Spectral Sailor and Spyglass Siren, you can actually kind of focus your energy a little bit more on Kaido, because Kaido wants you to have cheaper flyers that are good to bounce back. And now that you have 8 1-mana creatures, that makes those draws involving Kaido a lot more potent. And personally, the list that I've been liking actually goes all the way up to 4 Kaidos.
Do they what's getting cut for Spectral Sailor out of the list that you shared with us? Are they cutting Fairy Mastermind, or are they cutting something else?
So I think the one that I posted in the show notes may not have Spectral Sailor, but the lists that I've seen, they're cutting extra 2-drops. So you'll notice that the list in here has 4 Deep Cavern Bat, 4 Fairy Mastermind, 2 Flood Pit Drowners.
Right.
Those extra Flood Pit Drowners usually get cut, and then some number of the 3s. So it's usually like 2 Drowners, then 1 Preacher, and maybe like a removal spell here or there to make room for the Spyglass or the Spectral Sailors.
Got it. Yeah, this deck has a lot of creatures for being a mid-rangey deck. It's kind of up to 24. It's not that many spells. It's pretty interesting in that sense.
Yeah, like I said, it almost feels way more like I guess not quite like Delver, because Delver had quite a few more spells than that. But yeah, I see what you're saying. It's like it's more of a beatdown deck. You know?
Surprisingly, it's a beatdown deck with a bunch of 1/1s, but yeah.
Kaido hits hard. Kaido hits very hard.
So Kaido is interesting. How does Kaido hit hard? Because it starts as a 3/4. Mm-hmm. Are you just plussing it a lot to just make it a bigger and bigger ninja, basically? Or what's going on there?
Well, it really depends. So when you're on the play, if they have, because usually you're going to be hitting with a flyer, and then the play patterns usually, if you play Kaido and they say they have 1 creature in play, most of the time, depending on what that creature is, if it's like a Glisser or something, you're just going to lock it down for a couple of turns. They're not going to be able to pressure the Kaido that turn because you've stunned their creature. And then you're guaranteed to untap with the Kaido. And then from there, depending on what their follow-up is, you can make an emblem to hit for more damage. You can just attack with your flyer. Zero the Kaido if you have extra removal to protect the next turn. It just gives you a lot of flexibility. But the most important part is the fact that it's just removal or, temporary removal with icing down creatures. And then you also have the ability to it attacks for a bunch of damage. You can keep plussing. Like I've had games where I plus it a couple of turns and all of a sudden I just now have a 6-power Kaido.
Right.
But yeah. And I think that's a huge divide where I've seen a lot of lists kind of fluctuate between the number. Usually it's between 2 and 3. But as we talked about previously with the Spectral Sailors, I've actually been personally myself, I've really been liking going all the way up to 4. And the nature of the card, like when you have 4 copies and you have extra copies in your deck, you can even go the first one minuses. Right, then you go back to your turn, minus again, and then you have the second one to just lock down. You just lock down their whole board for a couple turns if you have multiples of them. Yeah. So they actually do kind of play nice in multiples, which is kind of cool.
Interesting. It's like the best Gideon Jura ever. Isn't that what this is? It's basically
similar.
Gideon, right? But it's cheaper. We can cast it for cheaper with ninjutsu. And so that essentially gives it haste, right? So there's some interesting stuff going on there.
Yeah. No, fantastic card. And, I've heard some people talking about just, sort of removing it from the deck entirely because they feel like there's a common misconception, at least for me, where a lot of people seem to think that it's only good when you're ahead. But I don't think that's necessarily true. It's pretty good when you're at parity. If you both have 1 creature and yours has flying and theirs doesn't, then you're going to hit with your flyer, hit them for 3 damage that turn, and then lock down their creature, giving them, making it so they're incapable of killing your Kaido in the follow-up. So I don't even necessarily think it's good when you're ahead. I don't really know where that comes from, but huge fan of that card, and really, really good card in the Dimir decks.
Nice. All right, so Golgari.
Golgari. So now, when we talk about mid-range decks, this is the quintessential mid-range deck.
This looks perfect.
No notes.
So this deck is we talked about kind of the Dimir deck being a little bit more lower to the ground, more hyper aggressive, and utilizing the cheap removal backed up by the cheap threats. Golgari is sort of the opposite of that, where you have a lot more expensive cards, a lot more 3s, a lot more 4s, even going up to 5 with Unholy Annex. But because of the printing of Llanowar Elves, it is like, if you go back and look at a Golgari list before Foundations, it's going to have a lot more 2s, because they were just playing like their normal curve before was cut down or duress on 1, 2-drop or go for the throne on 2, and then Gliss on 3, right? Now your normal curve is Elf on 1, Gliss on 2, Archfiend on 3, and that gives the deck the ability to kind of keep up with the aggressive nature of the Dimir deck, where every game you untap with an Elf and curve that into a 3-drop, it's like you are just miles ahead of your opponent, even though you're basically only an extra land drop up. But that the fact that gives you such an advantage of casting your spells like a turn before theirs is really sick. As far as, they have a lot of the same Black Disruption. They have, like I said, the heavier hitting threats. Basically every Golgari list I've seen is on the Annex Archfiend stuff. There's not really a Golgari list that doesn't have demons. And again, I think that's partly due to the fact because we have Llanowar Elves, right? You can play these more expensive cards because you have Elf to sort of bridge the gap.
I mean, it's kind of interesting. Well, I guess, is there a deck around in Standard? Maybe it's coming later that does the Archfiend, or not Archfiend, the Bloodletter of Ascalot plus the guy.
The Slasher.
Yeah.
So people tried that when Slasher first came out, but I think they quickly realized that you're probably just better off playing a second color, because the way that Standard mana is, you can't really afford to play Bloodletter in a 2-color deck. It's a triple black card, and the mana in Standard is just not that good. So you really have to be mono black, but you are sacrificing a lot to be mono black.
Interesting. Okay.
And specifically in the sideboards, like if you look at the blue sideboard cards being like counter spells to Shana's Tidebinders, those are very unique cards in very specific matchups. And then green having access to like Tear Asunder and Frillback, the black deck, if you're mono black, you just don't have that type of range on your sideboard cards as well. As far as Foundations cards in Golgari, Llanowar Elves, I don't think I've seen a Golgari list over the past 2 weeks without 4 Elves. I think people have kind of sort of come to a consensus on that. Shane talked about Maelstrom Pulse earlier. I've seen one here or there. I've seen a couple of lists have main deck Scavenging Ooze. Usually it's a 2 of. Soulstone Sanctuary is a very popular option as well because of the Unholy Annexes. Usually a 2 of. And then the last Foundations card that some lists are adopting is Vivian Reed, which is I wasn't seeing in the very first list before the release on Arena, but after this weekend, this batch of results over the weekend, I think more lists are they're doing one main, one sideboard, which I kind of like. It is for people who don't know Vivian Reed, it's a blast from the past, but it allows you to kill flyers or artifacts or enchantments. So being able to destroy an Unholy Annex or an Archfiend in the mirror match is pretty big.
Okay, so that's tier 1. Mid-range.
I'm not necessarily doing them like tiers. This is just kind of like...
No, you're doing them in tiers now.
Okay.
Okay.
Tier 1A, Tier 1B.
I'll rephrase. That's the first place you wanted to stop, mid-range.
Yeah.
All right, what's next?
Honestly, you could probably take all these decks that I'm talking about. This would probably be the entirety of Tier 1. These are the best decks.
Okay. And the next one on that list is Boros Prowess, which we talked about a minute ago.
Yeah, we gotta talk Shane into crafting some Boros charms later.
Mm-hmm.
Boros Prowess, this is kind of the aggressive deck of the format. Really juiced up by the printing of Bolt Wave, Burst Lightning, and Boros Charm. And we already had Lightning Helix, so you have a lot of really high quality burn spells. And yeah, it's a deck that really didn't exist pre-Foundations. There was a lot of mono red and a lot of Drool prowess. But before Boros Charm we already had Helix, but before Boros Charm, there wasn't really enough good reasons to push you into white. And now, Boros Charm just giving you, like, that card is so crazy in this deck because, you know, a lot of people associate Boros Charm with just 2 mana 4 damage. And sure, a lot of the time that is going to be what the card is, but it just gives you a ton of flexibility, especially in combination with Slick Shot. Where, you know, if you have like a Slick Shot and a Monstrous Rage, that's however much, I can't even count that high, but that's just like you can kind of see where it's going when you have like Bolt Wave, Burst Lightning, Shock, all these 1 mana cards. If you can pair any 2 of them with Charm and Slick Shot, that's just an absurd amount of damage.
I think it's 16 damage if you cast a Monstrous Rage, a Boros Charm, and alone.
That sounds
so
right.
It's plus 5/0 for the Monstrous Rage, and then plus another 2, so 7.
And the Aura.
Yeah, so I guess it's 14. But once you do the double strike, but yeah,
right, yeah, it's a lot.
Yeah, it's
basically
that's a wild amount.
Yeah, but then not just the double strike as well. I've had a couple of situations where against sweepers, because back when Boros Charm was in standard, when it was in the aggressive decks, it was, you know, it was really sort of there, and people have sideboarded Boros Charm historically as a way to stop sweepers, where your opponent goes to cast a Day of Judgment, for example, and you're just, you know, Boros Charm your whole board to give them indestructible. But a lot of the sweepers kind of exile nowadays. You have Temporary Lockdown, Sunfall, so it's not as good against a lot of the popular sweepers, but specifically against removal. Like if they go for the throat or cut down your creature, indestructible, that comes up, or even in combat, it's like, you know, if their creature is somehow like big enough to survive double strike, you kind of get the idea. It's just flexible card, which I like.
Yeah, honestly, I sort of can't believe I'm looking at this creature suite with like Monastery Swift Spear and
I know, it's just all modern cards, right?
Yeah, it's like, okay.
It's crazy. No, yeah, the creatures in standard are fantastic, which is, so I had actually been kind of messing around with a couple of different versions that kind of lean a little bit more in on the pump spells. There's like the mouse package, so you can play Heartfire Hero, Manifold Mouse, Emberheart Challenger, and the pump spell, Might of the Meek, I think is what it is, where cantrip plus, you know, pump if you have a mouse and trample. So there's definitely some interesting things that you can mess around with, but it seems like the more popular versions of Boros do not have the mouse package. It's really just like, here are the most efficient 1 mana cards, the most efficient 2 mana cards, and then all the best burn. Personally, myself, I don't know if I love the full playset of Helixes in the main, just because it does not line up super well against the other mid-range decks, but it is, fantastic in the aggressive mirrors for sure. So probably want 4 in the 75. The last thing I want to note about the Boros Prowess deck is there seems to be a lot more people who are playing Screaming Nemesis, like more Screaming Nemesis / Urabrask's Forge over Case of the Crimson Pulse. And if I will caution the listeners at home who are potentially looking to sleeve up Boros for the next RCQ, you should play Case, and probably in your main deck. Just because if you look at how many burn spells this deck has, it's like Bolt Wave, Burst Lightning, Shock, Boros Charm, Helix. You have a ton of burn spells, and burn decks historically have a tendency to sort of run out of gas, and Case just allows you to basically, you know, never run out of gas against these other mid-range decks.
Yeah.
Fantastic card. A couple left here, 2 left to be precise, for what Dave is apparently dubbing the tier 1 of the format.
Never seen this format before, but this is tier 1.
Yep, tier 1 confirmed. You can, you know, send all hate mail to Dave at thedivedown.com.
You can find me on Blue Sky send me your mean skeets.
Are you sure that's what we're calling him? I don't.
It's not what I'm calling them. It's what they're calling them.
If you just take ownership of the word, that's where we want it to be.
It can't hurt me. Yeah, that's true.
Copyright it. All right, mono white tokens. So when you hear the word mono white tokens, you might think, you know, I'm trying to think of like Legion's Landing and Raise the Alarm and all these kinds of like cards that make multiple tokens. Well, that's not what you're going to find here. you're going to find
Lingering Souls in my
Or
standard.
what's the one about
No,
the
no, no.
wastes? The like
Secure the Wastes.
Yeah, secure the wastes. That's a good one too.
I will tell you that this deck is labeled mono white tokens, and it has 4 main deck copies of Sunfall.
Wow.
So if that gives you an idea of what's going on here, it's not really a tokens deck. This is mono white control. This is, if you want to play control in standard, this is where you want to be. And it sort of has all of the same elements that you would look for in a control deck, right? You have the cheap removal with Lay Down Arms and Get Lost. Side note on Lay Down Arms, possibly the best, like one of the best removal spells in the format, but obviously you can't play it in a deck other than mono white.
Right.
Because it's exile a creature with mana value less than or equal to the number of planes you control. Its controller gains 3 life. So you need to play a lot of planes, but it is a phenomenal card. So you have that aspect with the cheap removal, you have the sweepers in the form of the main deck Sunfalls, and then you have your card advantage engine, which seems a little weird, but you're utilizing both Caretaker's Talent and Enduring Innocence, both of which sort of allow you to draw cards when you play tokens, and then you're combining that with, no, I'm not joking, this card is in the deck, Carrot Cake. Which is pretty
Delicious
funny.
for one thing.
Yeah, I mean, I love that. Are you guys a big fan of Carrot Cake? Not the card.
Yeah. Not really.
Have you ever heard my impression of Tony Montana saying carrot cake?
No, but fire it off.
Carrot cake.
Wow. Okay. It's good.
Yeah. So
I can, yeah, I mean, like you can see where this is like a control deck, even though like when you think of tokens, it's like, well, I'm going to get him dead and go wide. Like you can just buy a bunch of time against blockers. Attackers that don't have trample. You can clear them off. You're gaining life with Carrot Cake. Just a lot of ways. You're gaining life with Beza. There's just a lot of ways to get the job done and then turn the corner.
right. Yeah, so you have the removal, the card advantage engines, and then sort of like your mid-range / top-end threats with, as you said, Beza. Some of these lists play Overlord of the Mistmoors. This one that I featured has 1 copy, some play more. And then Archangel Elspeth is kind of like your Planeswalker of choice, where it allows you to make tokens, shocker, to draw cards off of Innocence and Caretakers, but also can provide a steady win condition too.
May I say it's weirdly refreshing to see Planeswalkers cost like $6, $7.50 again. Like I'm so used to Planeswalkers being released and like instantly being like, bulk.
Yeah.
Thanks for being
nice.
Planeswalkers again.
Thanks for only printing 1 per set.
There's a couple on Foundations. None of them see play though.
There's one in every color, I think, actually. I think.
Yeah.
Am I wrong? Or maybe
Oh,
not,
yeah,
because
yeah,
Kaito is blue-black, so maybe they're not. The wildest one to me is a Johnny Caller of the Pride. We can't get rid of that card.
No.
It's in every core set.
Still not playable though.
Yeah, exactly.
Never will be.
I mean, this is a tokens deck. Where's your Johnny Caller of the Pride? I'm just kidding.
It's actually funny. I want to go on a side note here because I was talking with a friend at the LGS the other day, and we were discussing like reprints that could be good. Do you guys remember Angelic Destiny?
No.
Is that from Guilds of Ravnica or whatever, like the 3rd Ravnica set?
No, I think it's originally M10. It's 2 dub aura. Give your creature +4/+4 flying double strike, and then when the creature dies, you get the aura back.
Yep, I'm looking at it right now. Okay.
The card's cool.
M12.
M12 is the original.
Yes, it was an M12,
It got
it looks like.
reprinted in Foundations, and I feel like that card's good, but maybe it's just a sign of the times that we can't be playing 4-mana auras anymore.
Oh, don't tempt me.
I digress. So yeah, that's kind of to give you a rundown of what the deck is looking like. As far as Foundations cards are in this deck, you will not find any of them in the main deck. There's not really. I've scoured through basically every list of mono white tokens. None of them have Foundations cards in them. They do have Authority of the Consuls in the sideboard, which is a good card to kind of stick it to those pesky Boros decks. And fantastic reprint, by the way. I like that we have good tools like that as necessary, like natural backstops in case the red decks. And you kind of see like what they were going with the set. They juiced up the red decks, but they also gave us a bunch of good sideboard cards just in case things happened, which I like. One last thing I will mention about the tokens deck, there was actually 2 copies in the finals of the SCG. So that was a mirror match in the finals. So this deck did do pretty well this weekend. All right, moving on. Last deck I want to discuss today as far as the tier 1, as told by Dave. Azorius Oculus.
No, Devin says this is tier 1.
Right. Azorius Oculus. So, as the name suggests, not a deck that was playable prior to the release of Duskmourn. Just all-timer set, by the way. Duskmourn is fantastic. And people had kind of experimented with Helping Hand plus Monastery Mentor and Haughty before, but it didn't really take off in the way that it did until Oculus, just because, we're a primarily modern podcast, so folks at home probably have had the experience playing against the Oculus deck in Modern as well. Yeah. And I got to tell you, that card on turn 2 is just really hard to beat in Modern, and it's even harder to beat in Standard.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it's probably more resilient in Standard, because a lot of people that I played against or I've talked to about Oculus in Modern have been like, have a love-hate relationship with Oculus, where they're like, I love the great starts and it's terrible otherwise sometimes. But I imagine here the power differential is so high that you feel just really good about it.
Can you get this out on turn 2 in Standard? I don't see any 1 mana graveyard filling stuff, and maybe I'm missing it.
The only way, and this is maybe stretching it a little bit, the only way is Meticulous Archive.
Oh, yes.
Which you'd have to get very lucky, but it has, I will say, it has happened to me on stream before.
Mm-hmm.
The classic Entomb.
Man, these Surveil lands are so expensive. $20 a piece.
It's unbelievable.
Yeah.
It's unreal. I don't get it. But yeah, the Oculus deck, if you're familiar with the Modern deck, you probably have an idea of what's going on here. We don't quite have the same efficient ways to get cards into the graveyard like we do in Modern. So we're using stuff like Picklock Prankster and Chart a Course and Moment of Truth and Founding the Third Path. That's kind of like our big mill cards, along with Helping Hand plus Recommission, which is effectively a 2-mana Helping Hand. Mm-hmm. But one thing I do want to mention about this deck, Kiora the Rising Tide, which is seeing quite a bit of play in these lists, as we talked about a little bit earlier. This card is fantastic in these decks. It's not only a card that lets you put Oculus into the graveyard, it is a card that is an alternate threat. It's, 3. If you untap with it, you have Threshold, which pretty easy in this deck. You make it 8/8. It's even an Helping Hand target. If you don't have a Jin or an Oculus, handy, then you can just Helping Hand this and help churn through the deck and keep going. So fantastic printing for this deck. And then the last card that I want to discuss here is Unsummon, which is interesting. Now, you might look at a card like Unsummon and question why people are playing Unsummon over Floodmaw, because Into the Floodmaw can bounce not just creatures. Well, the difference is Floodmaw only bounces your opponent's stuff. Unsummon can save your creature from a removal spell. So I don't know exactly what the split you want on Unsummoned Floodmaw is, but I think you want a mix of both, just to give you that out of bouncing your own thing in case they have a removal spell.
You can re-trigger your Picklock, re-trigger Kiora's.
That too,
the enters effects.
That stuff.
Yep. Yeah, you get to rebuy and all that stuff. So Unsummon's probably got a little bit more usage. It's more, Unsummon's like more of a proactive card, right? But Floodmaw is maybe a better post-board card, because you can bounce Graveyard Hate like Rest in Peace and things like that. So, but yeah, that's kind of a bit of a look into the tier 1 of Standard as told by Dave, the Godfather. But yeah, if you got a Standard event coming up, you could definitely do a lot worse than any of these options. So good luck to our Standard players out there, and it's a lot of fun.
Devin, what should I play? Is it let's say you had theoretically a buddy, maybe you make some content with this person, right? And they were like, I need to make a new fresh arena deck for Standard. And maybe this person preferred doing best of one, for quick little games. What should this person craft?
You should craft the red cards.
Okay. No.
And by you, I meant this person.
Yes, yeah, the royal you.
This hypothetical person should probably craft some red cards.
Yeah, the theoretical person we're talking about.
Yes, obviously. Okay. I should have prefaced that.
Perfect. Got it.
My bad.
Love it. I'll tell them.
Make sure.
What about Screaming Nemesis? Let's say we're going straight up. Look, if we didn't talk about straight up mono red, right? Mm-hmm. Is mono red a thing, or do you think it's sort of being like outclassed now that we have like access to Boros cards. You have access to, you know, the crazy ghost enchantment thing.
I'm going to be honest with you. I think there's basically no reason to be literal mono red. If you convinced me that you wanted to play a red deck where the only green card was Questing Druid, I could buy that. But, you know, like you said, there's green splash, the green splash for Questing Druid, Paw Patch Formation, white splash for Boros Charm, Sheltered by Ghosts, Lightning Helix. Like, you really should be splashing your color.
Okay, I can do that. I feel like this person, not me, has like Inspiring Vantage and Battlefield Forge, I think, from back in the day.
You should have them go take a look.
Yeah, I should tell them.
After this podcast, of course.
You're definitely talking a lot about crafting decks for someone who is taking a break from Magic or whatever, Shane.
Some people happen to have Arena on their Steam Deck, so it's easier to actually play Arena on the go for some.
I left that in the living room.
Sure.
Not to mention, your friend should also know that Battlefield Forge and basically every dual land in existence now has a beautiful full art version, so you don't have to be married to like the old Odyssey block, OG frame, garbage.
Wait, hold on a second. Are you disrespecting this particular Magic the Gathering card right here?
I can't believe he would.
Please tell me you are not disrespecting my Apocalypse Llanowar Wastes.
That's amazing.
Okay, those look good.
Beautiful, Devin. Can I talk about Limited?
You sure can.
Since you guys
The old Dave is back.
What's that?
The old Dave is back.
In which sense? That I like drafting?
Yeah.
Yes.
I haven't heard you talk about Limited in years.
Core sets will do that to him, man.
It's weird. It is weird. I've been drafting a good amount. It's only been over the last like 4 or 5 days, but I seriously have drafted I think I've drafted 6 or 7 times in like 4 or 5 days, which is a lot for me. Even though I'm playing best of 1, because I was like, maybe I'll grind the ladder and like see where that goes. So whatever. I don't know. It's weird how underutilized I guess best of 3 is these days in Limited, but it's still fun. This set kind of feels like coming home in a Limited set. It feels like more core set than many core sets that we've had the last couple of years, and it reminds me especially of like some of my favorites from the past. M10, for example. I think I said this during the spoiler session. I was like, oh, Deathmark and whatever, all these like weird color hosers are all in it. You know, that's very N10 vibes. It reminds me a little bit of M15 and Origins as well. So we're going back in the well a little bit. But those were fun sets to draft. Some people hated Origins, of course. But it reminds me of like the simple things that I liked about Magic in the beginning, right? It doesn't have super I don't have to figure out Manifest Dread, if Manifest Dread is good in this set or not. I just get to look at this and go like, wow, I can't believe that people don't like Burst Lightning. We'll get back to that in a second. What's up, Devin?
There's no mutate in the set is what you're saying.
Yeah, there's no mutate. There's nothing like that. Seriously though, I've gotten a lot of very late pick Burst Lightning, so I don't know what is going on with that. That should be one of the best cards in basically any set.
Removal's bad now, Dave, don't you know?
Yeah, but it still kills people. All right, anyway. So I've done, like I said, around a half dozen drafts. It's been really fun. Here, I just want to talk a little bit about the things that I've had the most fun with so far. Red-white. I've done a few different, I think 2 different red-white drafts, one of which was not the tokens deck that you're supposed to get from the uncommon that there is in the set. I drafted a red-white pings deck that actually worked with like 4 Firebrand archers or 3 Firebrand archers.
Damn. Dave sees a signpost, goes elsewhere.
I didn't get it. But what I did get was 3 or 4 Burst Lightnings and a bunch of, what's the white card? The white removal is the O-Ring. I'm trying to remember the name of it. I wrote it down. Banishing Light.
Oh, it's
Banishing Light was also going very late, which like, of course, all these things are a little bit troublesome, but they're very good if you're just attacking. And then also every time you cast a non-creature spell, your Flamebrand archers kill them, basically. So combat tricks, we're doing extra pings. You get 2 Flamebrand archers off. Things are going really wild. I don't know. I don't normally like a deck like this, but I just kind of fell into it, and I had a lot of fun with that. And this is the one that was held down at the top end by Shivan Dragon and Sarah Angel. So if I got that deep in the game, then I could just throw down Sarah Angel and try to finish people off. It worked. It was fun.
They might make Shivan Dragon an uncommon to drive down the nostalgia, but they still just hit as hard as they did back in the day.
I think they're fine card. I mean, 6 is a lot more than 5, of course, and not having vigilance kind of sucks, on Shivan Dragon, but it's still a flyer. It's all right. Then I did another red-white deck because people kept handing me Burst Lightnings again, except for my pack one, pick one of that draft was Embercleave, which was hilarious in draft. So I just had like a low to the ground tokens deck with Embercleave, and that was really fun. I didn't get the 7-0 with RS7 win deck with any of these. Unfortunately, I've gotten to 6 and 5 and stuff like that. But I'm shaking the rust off here. I also managed to draft an Elves deck for real. Like, people joked about it, but this Elves deck, you can see a screen grab here. I had 3 Llanowar Elves. Llanowar Elves also undervalued. I've seen in the best of one queues so far. There's a lot of late of those going around. So I had 3 Llanowar Elves, 3 Dwynen's Elites, an Elvish Archdruid, a Lathril Blade of the Elves, 2 Dwynens. So I had 3 Lords.
David, are these best of one queues against humans or robots?
Humans.
Okay.
Yeah. Humans. And I had 2 of the Black Elf as well, the Infestation Sage. So I had 13 elves in my deck with 3 lords, which turned out to just be an elves deck, and it worked great. Green, black elves.
I've heard really good things about Lathril. Did you ever get a chance to connect with that card?
Oh, yeah. Yes. Yeah. I did not get a chance to tap it and use its activated ability, which seems near impossible to do, even in a deck like this that, like I said, have more than a dozen elves in it. But if you hit once, and I hit once with an Elvish Archdruid on board, and I got 3 elf tokens that were also 2/2s, was like, Jesus. Hello.
Yeah.
So that was pretty great. But the last thing I wanted to talk about here, because I'm trying to leave plenty of space in the episode for Shane and Stan to talk about Pokemon, apparently.
Not enough space. We need more space.
Is the deck that I think is actually the best is the red-green creatures with power 4 or greater deck, which I guess is just ferocious, although nothing really has
Dave.
ferocious.
Can we call it ferocious?
Yeah, well, none of these have the keyword ferocious, but there's all these things that trigger in different ways off of creatures with power 4 or greater. I actually just think that this deck has been the most solid and maybe underdrafted and available of the drafts that I've done so far. And that's because the payoffs are actually really pretty good. Garruk's Uprising, which is the aura that if you have a creature not aura, it's an enchantment. Creature 4 or greater power, when it comes into play, you draw a card. It gives all your creatures trample. And then every time you play a creature with power 4 or greater, you get to draw another card. There's there's a rare called Sylvan Scavenging that is generic green that says at your end step, you can choose one of 2 things. You can choose to put a +1/+1 counter on a creature, or if you have a creature with power 4 or greater, you can make a 3/3 token, which is just an absurd payoff to be able to just make a ton of 3/3s in a deck like this, just every turn. And then honestly, you get into just other big creatures like the red-green rare Asteroid Animist is really powerful and makes your creatures hit really hard. You can play Galta in this deck very easily, and I've gotten it like pick 9 of pack 3. It's been like, here's a Galta, and I'm like, oh yeah, I can cast Galta on turn 5, no problem. And then all of a sudden you have a 12/12 with Trample coming down. This deck has been really good, and I think the secret glue here is the Cerberus that looks really bad. It's a generic and a red for a 4/3 that if it has Morbid, so you can attack with it, but it doesn't untap unless something dies on a turn, then it untaps. But it's a 2-mana card that has 4 power, and so that gets the ball rolling really early, and nobody wants that card right now from what I've seen. Like, the black decks don't seem to value it. There don't seem to be a lot of people here. Like I said, I think Llanowar Elves and Burst Lightning, at least when I was playing online, have both felt a little underdrafted, or I'm getting them late, and they're both fit into this deck very, very well. The uncommon in this red-green deck, Ruby, which was in the Tales of Eldraine or whatever, Wilds of Eldraine, the second, the recent Eldraine set, is a 2-mana 1/2 that has a payoff to become a big creature. But it has haste and it taps for red or green. So you can do things like on turn 3, you can play this and then play another 2-drop on turn 3. And that can be really, really, really powerful as well. So it felt like that was really happening for me as far as a deck archetype goes. Anyway, playing limited has been a nice way to just like chill out,
Enjoy Magic.
Just like,
Pure game that it is.
have it not be too complicated with too many triggers flying all over the place. I'm sure someone's going to find like total dominating strategy pretty soon, and we're gonna go through this is a bomby format, this is not a bomby format, like this is a tempo format, like all the things that happen with limited formats. It's been really weird to think about this format being around for 5 years to draft, though. That like 3 years from now, I could go to a new player like, hey, if you want to do like a great pure drafting experience on Magic, just get a box of Foundations and
Foundations
have it be,
Cube.
Yeah.
I mean, there's something to be said about Magic as Garfield intended while
Right.
looking at Foundations as this product that's supposed to exist for 5 years. You can buy a booster box, essentially cube with it forever, build a ton of different decks.
Yeah. Played in Standard for a very long time as well. So
Yeah.
I don't know, go check it out. I think that if you are looking for something fun and easy to do as you're relaxing this holiday season, Foundations Draft is not a bad thing to spend some time on.
That's sweet. Stanislav,
Yo,
are you ready for potentially the last thing I ever talk about on this podcast to be Pokemon Pocket?
now it's pronounced Pokemon.
But it's my pocket.
Exactly. It's not your Pocket. And Pokemon
My Pocket.
is Pocket Monster.
Oh, I got it. Okay, I got it. Got it.
It's really
That's actually one of my biggest pet peeves
Pokemon.
in the world
Pokemon.
when people call it Pokemon.
So it's Pokémon.
Pokemon.
Right?
Pokemon.
Pocket
There you-
monsters.
Perfect.
Pokemon.
Thank you, Devin.
Yeah.
Shane, this is really kind of coming full circle for you, though, because weren't you kind of more Pokemon than Magic, and then later on you got Magic?
So, I played Magic at Rookie Grand Slam.
Oh yeah,
But
Jimmy.
it was
I remember Jimmy.
very kitchen tabley there. Like, like I was using like Frozen Shade. I thought was cool, right? As my kind of go-to card for
sure.
what I was playing then.
Yeah, you get in an argument as to whether it loses the +1/+1 after you pump it,
Yeah,
like
I
all
mean,
that kind of stuff.
But yeah, then I stopped after just the summer of that in '95, and then I did get back into set 1 Pokemon stuff, and I played, of course, the busted Blastoise deck, completely broken. But only played that for a little bit, and then I went to college and stuff like that, and didn't really keep playing.
I didn't know this about you, Shane, that you played essentially constructed, organized Pokemon.
Yeah, I did some lightweight tournaments where I was playing against literal children. I wasn't going to, I think, legitimate tournaments, but
I mean, didn't you come to our store?
I think I must have been there for one thing. I must have, because I remember one of the grinder Magic type people seeing Blastoise, I think, for the first time. He was like, "Oh yeah, that's broken."
Yeah.
And what I do know about you, Shane, is that you will, or at least have, occasionally played just casual kitchen table Pokemon. Now, as an adult, with
My nephew, my nephew. But besides just Pokemon, card game though, I have played a handful of digital CCGs,
Yes.
Marvel Snap. Before that, I played Runeterra for the first few sets when it was really good, in my opinion.
What was that other one? Eternal?
Oh yeah,
Or something
Eternal.
like that? Was that the-
Yeah, I played a boatload of Eternal early on, the first 3 sets of that. Great draft, pretty darn good constructed. So yeah, I played a lot of digital CCGs.
Have any of you guys tried the Bazaar yet?
I have not. I think I've heard of
No.
it.
Yeah, I've heard some good things about it. I haven't tried it myself yet.
This is also a new digital TCG.
Yeah, newish.
The Bazaar.
It's actually, I believe Reyna designed it, or was one of the designers.
Yes, this sounds familiar. That's probably why. But today, Pokemon
Pocket.
Pokémon.
So this didn't necessarily drop completely unannounced. There was some marketing for it months in advance. But I think if you're like us and you're not really embedded in the Pokemon community, it kind of just dropped out of nowhere. And just overnight, people were like, oh, the new Pokemon game is here. And I, like many others, just sort of downloaded it just to see what the fuss was about.
Yeah, I think I dropped it into our Discord. The only reason that I was aware of it and like got it like hour one is my little brother, who's about your age, Stan. So, you know, like an infant, basically. He's big into Pokemon. Like he does like card grading and selling. He does like content creation in the Pokemon space. So he's into it. And he was like waiting for it, and he was like, "Yeah, it's coming out. Oh, it's out." So I was in it.
Yeah. And I like Pokemon TCG. I've just never had the community to engage with it. But like every year or two, like something happens and I'll just get like really swept up in their primary digital client, which is kind of like their version of Magic Arena that is an actual facsimile of the paper experience.
And it's like super generous, right? Like it's easy to play, generous to play.
Generally speaking, sure.
Okay.
But the reason I refer to that one as the facsimile of the paper experience because Pokemon TCG Pocket is not.
No, it is not.
It is more like Alchemy meets Hearthstone meets the base of the Pokemon game engine.
I will say my opinion of the game is that it exists in the app to give you something to do with your pack opening simulator.
Yes.
That's it.
Because I think that this is a pack opening simulator and collection building game first.
Yes.
And a digital way to play with those cards second.
And you know what? I think you're onto something because opening the packs and getting a card you want from the packs is surprisingly more satisfying than any game result that I've had.
Yeah, I mean, let's I guess break this down pretty quickly, right? So the way this works is you can play this free to play. You get like 2 packs a day on a timer. You can get maybe about close to an extra pack a day, maybe less, like by doing some really easy quests. Like when opponents thank you for the game, which they do by and large, like a little extra like currency will appear in your inbox. Stan's going to complain about the currency later. And there's just you get like 2.5 packs a day. There's 5 cards each. There's 3 different kinds of packs in the set. There's some overlapping cards in those packs. There are unique cards within those packs. So the idea is that you build your Pokemon collection. There's lots of fancy art versions that will show off randomly, make you feel good, tickle your brain. Decks have 20 cards. You can have 2 each max. By and large, the decks are like 8 to 10 pokes and like broadly the same set of like utility cards. And then you can play a quick game that takes maybe 3 to 5 minutes, and you have to knock out 3 points worth of your opponent's Pokemon before they knock out 3 points worth of yours. The reason it's not just 3 is because the EX, like powerful versions, are worth 2 points if they get knocked out. And that's really it. So you open packs, you build decks, you can play like versus the computer, you can play versus real life opponents in a very casual environment where it's just like, do you want to play newbie, like, quote unquote, like the newbie zone? There's no rules for what you have there, or like the I play TCG zone. And it's just for fun. Like it's entirely for fun. There are like no stakes.
And there's no distinguishing between the newbie zone and the TCG zone. Like the rewards for winning are truly identical.
It's just for like, I'm going to be nice and not beat up some 5-year-old.
Yeah.
Okay, but go on.
I will say that.
Does it actually behave the same way as the real game for the most part, or is it a different game?
Yes and no.
Okay.
Fundamentally, it is like the same base engine of you play a Pokemon, you attach energy to a Pokemon, you can evolve that Pokemon, and you use those Pokemon to attack opposing Pokemon based on their moveset and the energy you've attached to them. There's some critical differences, though, which is the resource system is fundamentally different. And that's where my Hearthstone
you will note I did not say there's energy cards in your deck.
Correct. Yeah, so like energy functions like lands in Magic in a way, and you in the TCG you have them in energy cards in your deck, you draw them and you attach them to Pokemon. In this version, you just draw one energy every single turn that you can attach to your benched Pokemon or your active Pokemon.
And you have to, or you lose it.
Correct. Yeah, you cannot, I guess, like accrue
you can't
a
bank it like
of energy.
Hearthstone?
No, you can't bank it.
So you got to be as efficient as possible with your resources.
Yes, this is a resource management game through and through.
Yeah. And also, the reason I made the alchemy comparison is that there are some Pocket-specific versions of cards that bear a resemblance to real cards, such as the Pokeball, but are also fundamentally different because they maximize the digital nature of the client. Case in point, the Pokeball in the TCG lets you fetch a basic Mon, you reveal it, put it in your hand, shuffle. In the Pocket version, you're not revealing anything because it automatically fetches the basic.
Oh, yeah, you don't. Yeah, that's a good. Yeah, the opponent doesn't see.
Yeah.
It's one piece of information that's not public in a very public information game, which I'll get to later.
There's also a critical difference about the play and draw differential, where in the paper game of Pokemon, if you're on the play, the only thing that you are limited from doing is playing a type of card called a supporter card. That's kind of like the fundamental difference between going first versus going second. In the Pocket version, the fundamental difference is you can't attach energy to Pokemon. You can still play supporter cards on if you're on the play, but you can't attach energy.
You don't
to Pokemon.
Get energy. You can't even. That's not even an attachment.
Correct. That's
you
a really
can
good point.
attach.
Yeah, you can, if there's a way to cheat energy out using the Misty card, you can do that. But otherwise, you can't generate energy on turn one on the play.
Yes.
What I really want to talk about, because like we can't do this
it.
for 30 minutes, is that I'm hooked on something that I kind of hate, but I am hooked, and it's did the thing where it's just like it kind of makes me want to have friends to play the Pokemon TCG game with, because that is a fundamentally better designed game.
Yes,
but the core engine of the Pokemon TCG is still fun enough, and cracking packs scratches this itch that like cracking packs in Arena does not scratch an itch to me.
It does for me, to be honest. Not the same, but it's fun for me. A little.
But I think that Arena is not designed to be a crack packing application.
True.
The way this kind of helps, this kind of manages to capture like that magic of the Pokemon TCG community, which is all about like breaking boxes and having sick pulls.
Oh my God, tell me about it. It gets all over my YouTube serves all the time. It's just people opening Pokemon.
Yeah. And they've somehow managed to capture that in a gacha game while making like the actual game secondary.
Is it something about the animation? Like when you open the pack in this application, is there like a different, like you open a special card and it's like in your face kind of thing?
I think there are more special arts, and the special arts are funnier and weirder and cooler than a lot of Magic special arts. Like there's like what is it, Zubat? Is like, or is like there's this Zubat that looks like it was like drawn by like a 12-year-old. It's like amazing.
I think that might be Golbat.
Okay, a Golbat,
No,
bat.
There's
Some rectangular bat. And
I like the special art Slowpokes, which is just like this little green grassy
I have like
field
4
with a
of
bunch
those,
of like
man.
lounging Slowpokes around it. It's cute.
There's more like chase cards, right? And like, and it's not necessarily because they're good. Like some are, right? There's like, gold, like, gold foils of like the big 3, which are Mewtwo, Pikachu, and Charizard in this. But there's like also like animated versions of those too, where like you literally hold the card and it goes like into the card. And like the Mewtwo one is like literally a 40-second animatic. Like it's wild.
They're all 40 seconds.
Okay.
The Pikachu one is too. It's just like Pikachu hanging on a tree stump while like other friendly Pokemon flutter around it. And it goes on for a while.
It's a little bit too long. But I do think, Stan, like what you're saying is true about Pokemon and this game is like I do find it's like surprisingly strategically deep, and it makes me feel like, is this baby's first card game, or is this in fact like an actual decent system? Because like the more that you play the game, you realize how many things you can do to manipulate the outcome of the game. Like there's like one thing that's really good about the game is that so much information is open. I think much more than in Magic a lot of times, because what your opponent can do is more on the table. There are, of course, like, cards in their hand, but you typically know what they're going to be, especially in like the super small card set and like the set of utility cards that everyone basically uses. So like, just like giving an example is like one thing I realized lately is if my hand is not very good, and I want to be drawing into like an evolution line, like I really need the stage 2 evolution of like my dog or whatever his name is, right? I will keep cards in my hand and not play like another basic to the board, because my opponents will, if you have 4 or 5 cards, will use the red card because they see it as card advantage. Because what you do is you draw 3 cards, you shuffle your hand and draw 3 cards. So if you have 4 cards or 5 cards, your opponent is much more incentivized to think they're getting value off that. And like, that's just like small stuff I keep noticing, where it's like, there's just a lot of stuff like that, where it's like, how am I disrupting my opponent? When am I using my cards? Like, it's like Dave was getting at is like, it's very much a game about energy efficiency and resource efficiency and planning ahead. And so because so much information is public, like, what your opponent's plan basically is going to be. You know what cards they're going to have by and large. So you can kind of like really look and be like, okay, I do this, then they'll do that. They can do this. So it's really about like manipulating what's happening on the battlefield.
It's like that scene in The Office where Creed is playing chess against, I don't know if it's Jim or the intern. And he's like, you do this and I'll do that. And then I'll do this and then you do that. And then you do this and I do that. And then it's checkmate. And that's what playing Pokemon TCG Pocket is a little bit like.
Yeah, I mean,
except instead of Creed, you're facing down your opponent's wheezing.
Yeah, I think the play draw issue needs to be worked out, or going first, going second. I think it's a limitation of the card design. Like, there's maybe one deck where like going first is better, but it's a bad deck, like the Executor, because it's an evolution line that has a 1 energy attack. So like you play whatever he evolves from, and then on your turn 2, you can attack with your evolved Pokemon, and your opponent couldn't do that, but Executor sucks.
I think what maybe you're getting at is that like this is a really awesome proof of concept that there's a way to streamline the Pokemon TCG into a very native mobile first experience by adjusting rules a little bit. And us as maybe like slightly more hardcore TCGers like can identify issues with game design that need to be fixed, but it's not an alpha product, and it feels better than a beta product even, because the card pool is quite large. There's already like a very clearly defined metagame, while people simultaneously identify ways to like try to subvert and attack.
Yeah, there's counters that exist out there. Like I've been playing like a Pikachu counter deck that's just good broadly, but it's specifically good against Pikachu, and I really like that deck. And like Growlithe was seen as a terrible EX Pokemon, but he's quite good, I think.
Yeah, and there's like cards that will seemingly do nothing at face value, but people find like use cases for it. Like the fossil cards.
I love the fossil cards now.
Have like little strategic benefits that may not be apparent on their face, but then as this metagame has emerged and strategic best practices become front and center, because the volume of games being played is very high, you're constantly playing against people internationally with like their names being in different types of Asian characters from all sorts of countries from Eastern Asia, in addition to people who use Western characters with American names.
Yeah, I'd say like half my opponents have non-English character names.
Yeah. So like you can play a lot of games. It feels like a very large community. You don't have emotes. There's no ways to like bad manners your opponents, but there's still like tons of room for improvement because this is essentially the first iteration of this app that will almost certainly exist for years. Like for me, the biggest issues is that other than play draw being like severely unbalanced, like it's very slow.
It's slow.
These micro games that's just like first to 3 points should take 2 to 3 minutes tops. On Arena, they would take 2 to 3 minutes because like Arena is a very snappy application. In Pokemon Pocket, like everything has an animation attached to it that you can't disable. So like everything takes forever.
You're just watching tons of animations.
Well, it's not like they're cool animations. It's like when you drop a card onto the battlefield, it goes like up and then down. It's like everything. And when it moves, it like everything has like an After Effects like like make it smooth type thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like
Yes.
Easing, they call
easing.
it.
Thank you.
When you shuffle your library after playing a
God,
Pokeball,
why?
like it has to like show you shuffling and then like cutting the deck, and it's just like
it's like why? Everything should be sped up like 45%.
Yes, or at least have that in the settings.
Yeah, the economy is like slightly gacha-y, but thankfully it's not dangerously gacha-y. Like there's not premium currency that you have to decide what's like the most efficient thing to do with it. It's basically just like the stuff you get by playing, and then the stuff you get by the monthly, and all the monthly thing gets you is like visual stuff. And that's really it. Like, it's not overly complicated, but like, it's kind of annoying. There's like event currency that you only get during events, but you only can really get visuals with it or like promo cards with it. So it's like, it's not as bad as some gachas where there's like, literally like 15 different currencies to try to like deduce, but it's still somewhat complicated for a neophyte. Neophyte? Is that the correct term?
Sure.
Anyway,
So,
play some Pokemon.
This game has been a welcome distraction, or a nice way for me to scratch the TCG itch while I wait for Magic's BNR.
It's nice for me because like one thing they did that I like is like you're like, well, Shane, why would you play this game? Because I think they have some smart, meaning like why would you play it if there's no reason to play it besides opening packs? And they have done a couple smart events where it's literally like, hey, play this game versus real people. And you can earn like a little icon by winning a certain number of times, but you're also going to get like bonus free currency. Play this versus the AI, and you open up promo packs that have special promo cards in them. And some of them are only in those promo packs, but it's like very generous. Like if you play, you will get the promo cards. So stuff like that is like why you would play. And like since the PvP event is over, I'm playing a lot less. Maybe like, 2-3 games a day instead of like 10. But it's
PvP event is over?
What's that? Yeah, the PvP event. No, the
Lapras event?
The PvP, the PvE, the Lapras event is over. So I hope you got your Laprases, Stan.
I did.
And we should get out of here. I'm so glad that we had to end on the Pokemon note, Stan. Can I wrap up the show, please?
Shane, I would love to hear you wrap up the show.
Okay. That wraps.
I take that back. I want to wrap up.
Okay. Let's do it together.
No, you do it. You do it.
That wraps up this week's show, my friends. If you have not yet, make sure you subscribe to our podcast so you get the latest episodes as soon as they come out. If you use Apple Podcast, if you use Spotify, feel free to leave us a rating, shout off in the comments there. If you want to talk to us, you can go to The Dive Down, all one word, on Twitter, although we are now on the Blue Sky. We are at The Dive Down. There, you can find us. Or email us, thedivedown@gmail.com.
Also, you can find me on Blue Sky. My handle is just Magic the Gathering.
Yes, it is.
Yeah, and an unbelievable soon-to-be cease and desisted.
Bring it on, Morrow. I'm taller than you.
You have to go like super off the rails, Stanislav.
I'm trying to figure out how to offend the most people, but it's just not in my nature.
If you want to support us, you want to help keep us going, you can go to the Patreon at patreon.com/thedivedown. You can also go to our store at thedivedown.com/store. Get some stuff. I'm going into my fanny pack phase, by the way, guys. So I kind of need a Dive Down fanny pack. You can go to heavyplay.com, get some of those deck and dice boxes, play mats, sleeves that we talked about. Use code TheDiveDown2024 for 10% off your first order. Thank you, Mana Traders, for being an affiliate of the Dive Down. we'll talk more maybe when we come back about how Mana Traders is different. It no longer gives you 10% off your first 2 months, but you get a percentage of your first 3 months back with the code. Our code is the Dive Down 10, all one word. There's also a link in the notes that you can use that just kind of like works as well. As always, special thanks to the bands Nowhere and Spaceblood for letting us use their music. And until next month, get out there and think up a podcast that you want to do with some good friends. Brainstorm what you want to do. Put a little effort into it. Learn how to use Audacity, and then audition. Grind out a little bit. Get some good guests. Get some hype. Build up an audience. Build up an amazing community. Keep doing that for years and years and years. And apologize to your wife for doing it every week. Apologize to your friends for maybe not being able to do something certain nights of the week. And then it's really satisfying. And you end up on the other side with 301 episodes, maybe 10, 15 bonus episodes, a lot of pride in your heart, a lot of friends made along the way. Now this is where I get a little choked up.
Is it getting dusty in here?
A little dusty, you guys. But you should all do that. You can do that as easily as we do. We are normal people. I'm a normal guy. And I want you to know that you can do it too.